Good afternoon. Welcome back to the B&H event space. You are tuned in to the hidden power of a compact camera. Of course, hosted by Sony. A huge thank you to them for hosting today's event. And me being fresh off a vacation, a much needed vacation to the Western United States. I can tell you a compact camera is everything it's cracked up to be. But Maher Ismail here to tell you why. This is, of course, a three-part series that we're going to be bringing to you and, hopefully get some of you over the gear acquisition syndrome that we all suffer from and pare down a little bit. Maher, what's going on, man?
Hey, how's it going? Happy to be here. Good to see you again.
Great to see
Welcome
you.
back.
I'm back. I'm refreshed. I got a little red rock glow going to me. I was photographing with a compact camera. It's so great, man. Let me tell you, to not have to worry about which lens I'm going to bring. Do I
Ah,
bring the zoom? And then if we bring one zoom, is that zoom
then you
enough?
want
And
the
should I
other
go wide?
Zoom.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's like, why not go all the way? And then do I,
Yeah.
maybe I might see something 4 football fields away and I'll have to take a picture of it.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Absolutely. I'm getting already too excited trying to spoil my whole presentation here.
We'll keep it
Um,
bottled up, man. We'll keep it
let's
bottled
go.
up. I'll let you do your thing. I'm going to remind all of our viewers that if you guys do have any questions, you know what to do by now. And if you don't, and you're new to the channel, well, welcome. We have this and all of our other recorded live content here on our YouTube channel at B&H Event Space on there. You can ask questions. That's the beautiful thing about watching these live. So drop it right into the YouTube chat. Maher, I'm going to let you do your thing, and I will be back at the end for some Q&A and maybe in between.
Sweet. Yeah, and please ask questions. I don't want to have to talk the whole time. So the less I could talk, well, I guess if someone asks questions, then I'll have to answer them and talk. But if you can ask questions, don't hesitate. I love questions. So yeah. All right. Let's share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yep. I have
Awesome.
to take it full mode. I just see the top bar. I know you had it full bleed on here.
Let's see.
There. Oh, there we go.
For some
Okay.
reason, it wants to show the top bar on my end. Anyway, the usual technical difficulties.
we we love it. We're always here for it. Nah, yeah, we can see everything. We got the top bar, but hey,
Yeah, yeah, it's all
works
right.
for us.
I guess we'll deal with that. Okay. So, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Also, Derek, I'm so happy you're here. Because then I won't feel as, like that I'm geeking out about that compact camera by myself. Um, and yeah, without further ado, let's get right into it. Hello, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Maher Ismail. I have a background in computer engineering, psychology, and astronomy. And last event, we talked about the psychology of photography, how we can use a camera to change our entire reality, like what photography really does to the brain. We looked at some scientific experiments and data that shows how you can use photography to lead a more successful life, alongside a bunch of other benefits. If you haven't seen it and interested in seeing it, go check it out. It's going to be on my website. It's also, if you just search B&H Psychology of Photography, you can find it. And in today's event, we'll be doing a deep dive into one of my absolute favorite tools to gain all these benefits. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring to you the Sony RX100 Mark VII. So why this camera? Why, with all the gear I already own, would I want this camera? So I have the Sony a7 IV, I have the Sony a7C, I have a 35 millimeter 1.4 G Master, a 24 to 70 2.8 G Master Mark II, and a 70 to 200 G Master Mark II, a 14 millimeter and 85 1.4, a 2x select converter, and 2 drones. So why, with all this stuff, did I decide to buy this camera? And why do I think it's my absolute favorite tool to do photography at the moment? And that is what we're going to be finding out in today's session. So, objective, by the end of the series, excuse me, by the end of the series, you will have learned the psychological benefits that are exclusive to a compact camera. You will also learn the technical shooting and editing skills needed to get the most out of your compact camera. And this is a three-part series, as Derek has mentioned. And today is the kind of the psychology part. And then the next one is going to be the technical, which is on October 8th. And then last but not least is the editing, and that's going to be on November 4th. Um, and here's the agenda for today. So we're gonna talk about how it feels using it myself, like what I've noticed, and then how others are affected by this camera. We're gonna talk about play and creative voice, and then we're gonna talk about how it kind of holds up against a phone and a full frame camera, and then we're gonna open up for questions. So all the photos I'm going to be showing you today, unless otherwise specified, are taken on the RX100 in hopes of demonstrating how truly powerful this tiny pocket camera can be. So again, at any point, if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. For those of you who do not know, this camera is about 5 years old. It came out in August 2019, so almost about 5 years from exactly this month. And it's not a very cheap camera. And I bought it in the beginning of this year because I was simply tired of carrying all my gear, and I just always wanted to have a camera on me. So I decided to give this camera a try. And I honestly didn't I honestly don't think anyone really wants to carry a camera or like photography gear in general, especially when traveling, backpacking, hiking, or just exploring. In the last event, we talked about how photography can be used to be more present. And like, but paradoxically, it can also make us kind of lose touch if we get too consumed by the equipment and the gear and like trying to capture the photo. Um, it's just easy to get kind of fully consumed. And there's a very thin line between getting consumed by trying to take a photo and using a camera to bring yourself to the present moment. Um, when I'm using this camera, I feel like I'm further away from that line. And there again, there's a very thin line between using it as a mindfulness tool and getting kind of swept away by the technical and attempt to take a photo. So yeah, using this camera, I find it very simple to take on with me almost everywhere, to the point where I started taking it with me on my dreams. So this is really annoying, but I took this picture in one of my dreams, and I was swimming in the Antarctic Ocean. Thank God I said that right. I was swimming in the Antarctic Ocean, and the sun was setting. And you know when clouds are kind of pink from the sunlight, and like sometimes blue hour somewhere between sunset. So that was happening on the iceberg because they were also white. And then I was in the water, so I was able to capture the photo of the like majority of the iceberg that's under the water. Um, and here's another time, and these are all sketches of me attempting to get these photos because it's really upsetting when I wake up and don't have any of these photos. So this time I was probably somewhere in Florida, and this massive dragon-sized blue bird just started flying out of nowhere. And of course, I had my handy little RX100 with me, and I took these pictures and just admired it. So yeah, I was really upset when I woke up without these photos. And yeah, this camera has actually helped me see my dreams more vividly. And it also allowed me to see reality in a way much more vividly. I think this camera strikes a perfect balance in the 80/20 rule, and it pushes the limit of what can be done in like a very portable form factor. And the zoom range allows me to capture exactly like the parts I'm paying attention to. Like me and Derek were talking about this earlier, how like you never know when you want to get something that's 4 football fields away, or like we can focus on certain things, but if we don't have the right equipment, we can't really capture it. Um, Derek, can I pull you in for a second?
Feel free.
So, um, you mentioned that you had a compact camera with you on your last little trip. So far, did anything resonate with you or anything, um, yeah.
So, uh, um, full disclosure, I have been for a while. I've been old to the compact camera on the trip kind of thing. Out of laziness. I'm a pure lazy photographer. I don't like to
Efficiency.
pack. Exactly, efficiency. So I don't like to pack. I don't like to carry a lot. I'm always on the move. And especially when you're out in the desert, switching lenses, that's a big thing people don't think about. Just
Hmm.
because you can't see the dust and everything in the atmosphere, it's there and it just creates a nightmare. So not my first rodeo. I've learned to adapt the way that I see, and I think that's the biggest hump to get over is adapting and knowing my feet are the zoom. You have to kinda come to grips with, "This is my field of view. I have one field of view. If I wanna
So
change that
you're
field of
shooting with a
view."
fixed frame, right?
Fixed, yep, fixed 35
Oh,
millimeter equivalent.
interesting. Okay.
So, a little bit different than, what you're
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you have the added ability of
Yeah.
all that, but, to keep it just with the compact nature,
Yeah, you're even more
um,
compact.
I'm I'm even more limited. But with the compact nature, I think the main thing is this in the same way, like, because even with the zoom, it's like you're giving up a certain way of shooting. You have to kinda accept the
Yeah.
mentality of, like, I don't have you're cooking on the road. You don't have your kitchen, and I think that's the main hump to get over.
I swear, almost every time I pull you in, it's like you know what the next slides are gonna be. Um,
Yeah,
and
I'm ruining
and
the show.
no, no, it's a perfect way to like lead into it. It's a smooth transition. Um, but yeah, so back to the different perspectives aspect, I'm actually going to talk specifically about the zoom range. So, because I have that insane zoom range, I can speak English, 24 to 200. I think that covers a very wide, like a very very wide, what's the word I'm looking for? Perspective. Having a range that is this wide actually trains my reticular activating system to scan the world for photos on this entire range. And we talked about the reticular activating system in the last event. It's basically the part of the brain that filters out the world and the reality in front of you. So having that entire range right there in your pocket actually trains your brain to kind of notice more things. So again, if you have a fixed lens like Derek, you have also like benefits of being more compact and also being more limited in a way that you're forced to kind of see more in that specific range. I personally prefer the kind of wider range because I like to get the background a little bit closer, kind of on like this photo. I like to sandwich everything together, and just that's personal preference. Um, so yeah, it kind of sharpens these noticing muscles in general, just to have a camera always with you. A few months of using this camera, I actually started to notice more things, and I notice things even when I'm not carrying the camera, which is very rare at these moments. Sometimes I try to detox, I guess. Since I always have this camera with me, I started capturing more of my own life and my own experience, and not necessarily just trying to like make art or pretty photos. Which, funnily enough, I started producing some of my favorite pieces of art slash photos, and here are a few of my favorite ones lately. This one was in Iceland, and this one was in Italy, and this one was just from my balcony. It looked like there was a kind of a painting in the sky, and it started allowing me to kind of produce different flavors of art, and we're gonna kind of dive deeper into that in one of the following sections. Um, and I recently moved to New York, and having it with me every time I leave is has been just amazing because there's so much going on in the city, and every time I leave the house without it, I get so frustrated because there's so much that I'm missing. So again, having that in my pocket and not having to carry gear around me walking in the city, just going for a short walk, has been just absolutely lovely. And again, being able to get that like wide angle and then a more zoomed in approach in this hectic city just allows me to get so many different types of shots, and I just absolutely love that. Yeah, again, I love that compression. So the picture on the left, you can kind of see that compression from zooming in. It just kind of sandwiches everything in the background together. And yeah, I just love doing that. So yeah, and another very underrated feature is how easily I can take it into events without causing any commotion. So not only is it not allowed in like some of the biggest events, but it's extremely convenient to carry. Like I can just put it in like the pocket of my tuxedo or whatever I'm wearing. This was at the after Oscars, and this was at the Cannes Film Festival for Sorrentino. I don't know how to say his name exactly. His latest film, Partenope. I also don't know how to how to say the name exactly, but the film was in Italian. It was a lovely film, hasn't came out yet. And just having that camera with me in my pocket is just so effortless. If I had a whole camera with me, number one, I might not be allowed in there. And then the second thing is, it would just be just annoying and inconvenient. Um, Here is the top prize at the Cannes Film Festival, the Palme d'Or, and it was received by Goro Miyazaki on behalf of Studio Ghibli. And this was an event that was like on the left is the event. This is Miyazaki, Goro Miyazaki, and on the right is him receiving the event. On the left was a very small after party slash event that happened after the ceremonies. And again, if I walked in with a full frame camera, it would have been very odd and it would have potentially made people uncomfortable. But because this camera is like almost looks like a little toy, um, Goro Miyazaki was just very playful, and this is him giving me a little poster that he signed, just flexing out here. No, no big deal. But yeah, it allows me to go into places that I wouldn't dare to do with my full frame camera. Yeah, so this camera is just incredibly non-threatening, which is a massive part of my experience because my experience often includes others. And I love walking up to strangers. And when I do that holding this camera, it has been just received so much better because when I have a big camera, people are kind of more suspicious. They're kind of scared. But with this little camera, people are not as intimidated. And there is a massive aspect of intimidation in photography. It's literally called shooting. So yeah, I know I feel like we need to change the lingo around this camera. I mean around photography. Derek, if you have any ideas, we should brainstorm on that and come up with different terminology just to make it seem less intimidating. But anyway, so with a big camera, people think I will capture their soul and get all the details of their face. But with this camera, people are not as suspicious when I approach them. People can usually tell that that I simply find them interesting and want to take their photo. They find it more adorable than anything. Like usually they kind of chuckle a little bit and be like, yeah. And what they don't know is that I can zoom really closely in and still capture their soul and small details, um, which can also give me a little bit of depth of field, aka that blurry background. And I actually find it easier to capture someone's soul slash essence with this camera as they don't build up as big of a wall when they see a professional camera. And people either are flattered when I ask them to take a picture with this, it doesn't cross the line of intimidation as much, or they don't even notice, which in both cases, it's excellent because um, it allows them to show their personalities and a little bit more when I'm doing that. So, which brings me to the candid element of this camera and not disturbing people. Aside from the creepy element of it, there are wonderful moments that by trying to interact with, we can fully ruin. Kind of like if a water is so still and it's kind of reflective, if you interact with it, you kind of completely ruin it. So this is how I see these moments. There's so many moments that it's so much easier to capture with this small camera just because of how inconspicuous it is. Also, the fact that it's with me all the time. I find these real moments again yet to be another flavor of art, a type of art that feels kind of historic in nature. Not saying that my photos are going to be in history, but like I feel like maybe 50 or 100 years from now, someone will look back at these photos and say, "Oh yeah, this is from back in 2024." It's also a very genuine and peaceful type of art, in my opinion, just because it's kind of it's raw and it's a kind of a documentary type of art. It sometimes feels like I'm joining their reality slash universe just for a brief few moments. And again, by having it always with me, ready to shoot, I'm able to capture more of these magical moments. And also, I could zoom in and get into the details of that moment, kind of bringing the viewer or myself in this case, kind of closer to these moments. And these moments cannot be staged because you can kind of see that someone's in their own world, and it sometimes it feels a little bit intrusive. But I find that being able to capture that moment without interrupting is kind of an act of compassion. So arguably using this camera is more compassionate because I'm keeping the people in mind. There's moments where if I feel like someone will notice, I'm more hesitant to take the camera out, even though I know it will be a beautiful picture. But I have the sense that it will kind of disrupt them or throw them off a little bit. It can almost be selfish to take some of these photos. Um, but yeah, this camera is arguably a tool of compassion. And most people are just troubled when you look at when you point a big camera at them, especially in the middle of the night when they can't see what you have in your hand. They just see a big reflection. And people also assume that you're using it for something and trying to make money or sell it or something. People are just they have so many specific thoughts when they see this camera. I mean, a big full frame camera. With this camera, even when someone notices or if I ask someone if I could take a photo and they say no, they say it in such a less less serious way. They're like, nah. With a big camera, they're kind of like ready to fight me. They're like, no, like get out of here, like that kind of attitude. So yeah, with this camera, I get to admire and capture so many moments without having to necessarily bother anyone. And yeah, the camera isn't only good for candid moments. I was really surprised by how it performed and kind of orchestrated portrait shoots or fashion shoots. And again, the versatility of the zoom allows me to bring the background a little bit closer sometimes and stay in the flow of the photo shoot. This is an environmental photo shoot that I did in Iceland with these incredible dancers. I'm actually, excuse me. I'm actually doing a YouTube video about this one specifically on my YouTube at Maherz underscore. All the links are going to be in the description or on my website. So if you're interested in that, check it out. I also did like a whole portrait session from this photo is from that portrait session and recorded the whole process and showed a bunch of the examples I managed to get from that photo shoot. So again, if you're interested in that, check it out. I'm also let me drink tea. I think tea is good. I'm not nervous at all. I'm very calm. Anyway, so yeah, I'm also gonna be taking this camera to New York Fashion Week, which is in a few weeks from now, and testing it out and making videos about it. And I'm also gonna be testing it out at low light. I've been getting a lot of comments about how it performs in low light, so I'm gonna do a video about that as well. Um, But yeah, so again, 24 to 70 in the middle of a shoot allows me to get so many different perspectives. And again, it gives me that kind of background blur. Um, and this one was from the last New York Fashion Week. And I was very surprised by how it did in very poorly lit backstage lighting. I've used it on like professional shoots and I've submitted some of these photos to designers. Also, another surprise is in Egypt, you pretty much have to have a permit in order to do photography anywhere. But with the RX100, they actually did not need a permit. They don't consider it a real camera, I guess, and more of a toy. So it was really nice to kind of be able to do that. Um, as the camera is so portable and so undisturbing, I find it also very easy to just take with me in like personal moments. And these moments are moments I truly cherish. And these are moments with friends and family. And this is again another flavor of art. And I love this one so much, and it's very personal again. And they're not necessarily the best quality photos, but these are images that mean the world to me. And these are photos that are just for me beautiful moments, moments that I know I'll cherish for the rest of my life and look back at one day. And moments I already said moments that are beautiful. And yeah, I think it's just so disarming. And with the more I use it, also people kind of start ignoring it more. I think that might happen also with big cameras if I use them enough, but again, it doesn't disturb that moment and it kind of just passively captures them. And also, it's very easy to take with me on little odd adventures. And what I've noticed also with this camera is it draws out playfulness. It draws it out of people who are very close to me, but also out of complete strangers. This person was on a skateboard, and again, people see this camera and they instantly get in the mood of play. I'm not saying everyone does that, but I've noticed happen a lot. People just also love giving me the peace sign for whatever reason. You can't really tell here as much, but I was trying to take a long exposure photo, and the waitress was doing a little peace sign. Um, and then also these two people, the little girl on the right, she saw me taking a picture of like a cityscape and she just kept staring at me. And then I pointed at her and she gave me the peace sign. And the picture on the left, I was just walking around, saw this girl wearing a beautiful garment. I don't know what it's called exactly, but it looked really cool. And she was standing under the light. And as soon as she noticed me, she also gave me the peace sign. When we were kids, we naturally had that sense of play, and we kind of taught to ignore it as adults. And then I think the more some people, when they get a little bit older, they kind of start learning it again. So this old gentleman in Germany saw me with the camera and literally stopped for me just to take the picture. What I've learned over the past year now, after reading a book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, is that play and creativity, they go hand in hand. Creative energy is playful in nature, and nature itself is full of play. Even when we look at the cosmos, everything seems to be dancing and playing. And there's a common pattern in everything. That pattern is known as Wa in Japan and also known as Li in China. And it's the pattern kind of all things, kind of the harmony of existence. Because I've been using this camera so much, I think I started noticing this pattern. And I'm not saying again that this is exclusive to this camera, but it's kind of the constant use and kind of ignoring the tool a little bit. So whatever tool you use, the more you use it and master it, the more invisible it becomes. And the less it can get between you and your vision, and the less it will obstruct your attempt of self-expression, and the more you'll be able to play and tap into your inner playful child, as Julia Cameron would say. In that state, unlimited creativity is reached. I believe that when you are most connected to the harmony of the universe, your most beautiful art will be created. Not only is this a magical feeling that can bring you a great deal of like mental clarity and release dopamine, serotonin in your brain, which leads you to feel great and unlock all the learning centers of the brain, like we mentioned in the last presentation. But I would venture to say that it is even a path to enlightenment. Now, I'm not suggesting that I've reached enlightenment by any means, but I think the closest I felt to floating was states when I was just taking photos and feeling that kind of connection and noticing these patterns. Now, you can argue that you can reach that state just using a phone. You don't need a camera for that, which is arguably true to some extent. But your phone is a device that also carries a lot of mental associations with it. When you're using your phone, you're constantly faced with distractions and fighting your basal ganglia from doing so many things. These devices are like just full of things that are perfected to hack the dopaminergic systems and keep you on there as much as possible. So you have so much association of this device with something completely different than being in the moment or trying to capture the harmony or whatever you're trying to capture. So having a separate dedicated device can be magnitudes easier and better to get into the flow state of photography. As for the technical side of things, just the zoom alone, I have not seen any mobile device that can like compete with that. These are photos in Iceland, and these are like from the same vantage point. I think I used that term properly. And I could zoom, I can have this frame on the left, and then if I zoom in a little bit closer, it's this one on the right. And then if I zoom in a little bit closer, it looks like this. So I haven't seen any phone that can have that much detail when you zoom in. And yes, you can zoom in with a phone, but due to physical limitations like physics, you lose a lot of that quality and don't get that depth of field. Aside from that, it's very odd to walk up to strangers and ask them if you want to take a photo with your phone. Like with the RX100, I go anywhere in the world and kind of just gesture with the camera and be like this, and they instantly understand what I'm trying to do. And I'm not saying you can't make good photos with a phone, but again, just a completely different tools. Here are some of photos I've actually gotten with my phone. I think it was, I'm not sure which phone it was actually, but this was at the Grammys, and the phone, I took raw photos and I tried to edit them as much as possible. They came out very soft. On the left is John Legend, and on the right is Olivia Rodriguez. Here on the left is John Baptiste. I think that's how I say his name. And on the right is Billie Eilish. And all these are taken on a phone. So I'm very happy with these photos. I like them. But oh, how I wish I had my RX100 back then. Now, in this event, it wasn't full frame cameras weren't allowed, or like big cameras weren't allowed. So I had to do my best with the phone. Speaking of big cameras, how does this camera hold up against a phone? I mean, against a full frame camera. And before I got it, I thought it wouldn't stand a chance. I just wanted something to experience photography with. And compared to my full frame camera, but it usually holds up pretty well. And again, these photos are not taken obviously on the little camera, but um, at the end, the RX is not meant to replace my full frame camera. I see it as more of a kind of a complement, like a sword and a dagger. This is the image that I've been kind of having in my journal, or ways to justify myself purchasing this camera. And this photo I took with a drone and then sketched on it the sword on the right and then the dagger on the left. And I love that idea so much because I think it encapsulates this idea fully. And I did a few more sketches, and you can, if you look closely on the sword, it looks like the 85. There's an 85 millimeter. Um, but my point is, it's just a different tool, and it's a tool that I just love so much. And I'm personally drawn to that small dagger, or in this case, the Sony RX100. I still love using my big camera. It has its time and place, and the amount of detail I can get out of my prime lenses, especially, is just it's just beautiful. And it's they're not meant to fully kind of replace each other. I also love shooting in the dark, and the RX100 is not ideal in dark environments. There are physical limitations on the amount of light that I can capture with a small sensor. And but there are ways to kind of mitigate that damage, but we'll dive deeper into that into when we talk about the technical stuff, which is the next event. Um, and I want to end this session by emphasizing that it's never the tool that will define you as an artist or a creator. It's whatever tool works for you, and sometimes that can be the only tool you can afford. And if there's only one thing to take away, it's that restrictions can breed creativity. And I know I didn't talk about that concept too much, but Derek talked a little bit about how restricted his camera is, and that's one of the first things that came in mind. People have been making art for the entirety of history. Ultimately, the tool doesn't matter, and it's all about what you prefer to use and what's available to you. And all I'm doing here is showing you what's possible with just this one tool that I love so much. And the end. Thank you so much. I appreciate Derek for coming out today on from his vacation. I'm glad he came. It makes me feel a lot better having a familiar face. Thank you, B&H, for hosting this event, and Sony for sponsoring this event. And again, the series continues. October 8th is going to be the technical aspect, and then November 4th is going to be the editing. And everything is going to be kind of having that minimalistic, simple style. So if you're interested in that, subscribe to B&H Event Spaces, follow them on Instagram, follow me on Instagram. And yeah, and also after this series, we have an event called The Selfish Photographer, which I'm super, super psyched about. And it dives deeper into like the psychology and kind of the way of being an artist and being creative in general, and how to optimize creativity. Yeah, any questions?
Awesome. We'll open it up for questions. We did have a question come in that's probably more of a topic of discussion, more than just a
Oh
question, so to
boy.
speak. I love topics of discussion.
We
The
love that. I'm
questions
excited.
questions sound like it's just like, okay, you give an answer and you're done.
You know
This is
what? I
this is
love that
juicy.
actually. I'm gonna put that in my notes and have it topic of discuss. Do you have any topic of discussions?
Topic of
Eh,
discussion. It kind of
Yeah, because like who am I to answer questions? I'm just trying to discuss things with you guys.
we don't want to bite, we want a meal.
Yeah,
So we'll
yeah.
get to it. Visual modulations joining us once again in the YouTube comments. When you get to editing, do you find yourself affected by the camera that captured the image? Maybe more lenient with the compact because of the limitations versus more strict with larger sensors. So this is where I'm going to break it into a topic of discussion.
Ooh.
Gear sets its own limitation, and it's kind of it's linear. We set limitations that are non-linear. We get in our heads. We might photograph differently because we think a camera looks cool, and it has nothing to do with what's inside the camera, but it makes us feel differently. If
Hmm.
something is larger and more cumbersome, for some it might make them feel more lethargic when they shoot. It might stifle their creativity. For others, it might make them feel more professional. So could we just kind of break into this topic a little bit in, since we're talking about psychology, the restraints that we put on ourselves, the restrictions. Do you go into the post-processing or even the shooting process with a different mindset because of the camera?
I think yes and no. To be as I guess as like not controversial, paradoxical. I love that word. I think that's the theme of today, paradox. And I think it can be, and it also doesn't have to be. I think I can try to use my camera as exactly as if it's the full frame camera and see what happens. And I can also adapt and kind of listen to the tool a little bit more and see how it wants to kind of do things. And again, that's very personal because I'm applying my reality slash my experience slash my life, combining it with this tool. So when someone else is doing the same thing, the results might be completely different. Maybe, for example, like maybe if I give you the RX100 right now and I tell you, okay, go shooting, you might even forget that it zooms in. You'll be just shooting as if it's a fixed lens. You might put it exactly at 35 and just set it and forget it and just kind of keep shooting. So, and you'll still make phenomenal results and things that are more personal to you, and you'll be able to kind of make the most out of it. And it goes back to like kind of something I mentioned, which is whatever tool it is, the more you kind of master it, the more it removes itself and allows you to kind of speak through it. And it could have an effect on it by choice or not by choice. And again, it's not black or white, it's kind of a spectrum. So you can kind of decrease its tint almost, kind of like sunglasses. You can decrease the tint of that tool and then you can increase it also. And that's completely up to you and a complete choice. Did I answer? No, that wasn't a question. That was a topic of discussion.
Yeah, you gave your
And
input.
did I give my input properly? Did
No,
that make
totally.
sense?
No, it totally makes sense. I'm going to take it to the post-processing side of
Oh
that
yeah.
topic of discussion in that, I just went through this. Coming back, I got a long plane ride, nothing to do but upload my images to my iPad and, then I'm limited, but it's like I noticed that when we post-process images, when I'm photographing with my main big,
Yeah, yeah,
super,
yeah.
the really good gear versus like when I take out, like sometimes I do like to take out like an old point and shoot. And I'm talking like, I'm
Yeah.
not talking RX100. I'm talking like
Even older?
old, low
Oh,
megapixel
you
count.
out
Like,
olded me.
oh yeah. Like I'll
Dang.
use my son's sometimes. My son has a little point and shoot, and it's like, there's just a certain quality to it, a certain je ne sais quoi of like the low megapixel count
Yeah,
and the
yeah, yeah.
degraded
Add a
image
little bit of grain
quality.
in there too.
Yeah, I mean, the image itself, the image quality isn't there, and I notice when I'm editing stuff like that, it's more like film. You're more
Yeah.
apt to take it
Yeah,
out of
yeah, yeah, yeah.
camera, and when you have, like, if you're shooting with, like, some of these cameras now, you're looking at, like, 63 megapixels, 100 megapixels, 50 megapixels,
Yeah, yeah.
and you wanna zoom in whether you're
Oh
pixel
yeah.
peeker or not, and you're gonna make little adjustments because everything you see it there. So that even adjusts your mindset. If you're taking pictures on a 4 megapixel early digital point and shoot, you're not going into it with the latitude to
Yeah,
do as much post processing. So it's kind of like you
that's
take
true.
it, you set your mindset like, okay, this is a low megapixel count. I can't do that much with it. But now when you have all the technology at your hands and you have such high resolution sensors and such high quality images that are coming out of these cameras now, it's like, okay, well, because I have the
Yeah,
latitude,
yeah,
I'm going to take it. So I think that affects the way you photograph. It affects the way you
absolutely.
go into processing.
That actually reminds me of something I didn't mention, which is the more I've been using kind of like a camera like this, whenever I use a full frame camera or like a professional camera, it feels like I was working out with weights on, and then I let go of these weights. I feel like as you said, I have so much more latitude. And I noticed in the editing, like I have so much more information to play around with um with a full frame camera. So it might not push me to kind of try to dial it in camera as much because I know I have so much room. But when I use the RX100, I'm like, okay, I know kind of the limit of how much room I have. And we're going to dive deeper into that in the technical and the editing one. But I see the photograph itself as kind of casting a net and capturing as much details as possible. And of course, the net with a bigger sensor, aka a full frame camera, is so much bigger. And I've noticed that I'm able to squeeze out more from my full frame camera just because I've been using the RX100 more. And I'm again, something you said, it's like when I'm using the RX100, I know that I'm not going to squeeze out too much. So I'm going to edit very minimally. At first, I tried to edit it the same way and try to go crazy, but I love the fact that I can edit more minimally. There isn't much I could do. So I can focus more on like getting it done and then move on to the next one. And I know I'm not gonna try to wow too many people with it. Well, maybe recently I've been trying to a little bit, but yeah, like it pushes you, and again, restrictions can breed that creativity in a sense and force you to get the most out of that sensor. So yeah, it does change, of course, when you have more a bigger net or a bigger tool.
Yeah, and I think one important thing to point out, this, I mean, for a lot of people, this is the professional photographer's point and shoot camera. I know a
True,
ton of
true.
incredibly accomplished professional photographers that use this is the go-to camera as far as image quality and just the functionality of the
Yeah,
entire
yeah,
line. I don't care which RX100 you're talking about. The
yeah.
entire line, from front to back, is it's just a super solid, capable camera.
Absolutely,
There, you
absolutely.
just run into physical, when you're talking about point and shoots and sensor size and the physics of the camera, which again, that we'll save that for the technical talk.
Yeah.
But physics is physics, and you can't overrun physics in a certain sense. You
Yeah.
just hit a certain point as far as when you're going for a certain look and a feel, and what you're able to do. So we'll save that for the
Hmm.
technical side. I do want to address a question that came in, Kevin. Really quick, easy answer. Uh, don't know if Sony will continue the RX100 series.
Oh, no.
To quote the infamous Tony Gale, if we did know, we wouldn't be able to tell you, and anyone who doesn't know wouldn't be able to tell you. So, no, I personally would love to see the series continue because, like I said, has been the professional photographer's go-to camera. A question from Jeff coming in. Loves the still photos from the little camera. Was hoping to hear more about the video function and quality. We're wondering maybe if we will dive into the video capabilities in parts 2 or 3.
That was kind of a disclaimer that I probably should have done. That I I even forgot that this camera shoots video. I don't use it to shoot video. I think it's very capable for video, and I might explore it in the future, but not in part 2 and 3. This is purely for photography, and I apologize if that wasn't clear from the titles or yeah. And I've been honestly using my phone more for video stuff, but as I'm leaning more into filmmaking, I think I'm gonna kind of test it out more. And the battery life isn't ideal for video. It drains the battery out a little too quick, but I do have a bunch of batteries. Like I have 5 batteries. So I think coming up my next pimping out my camera, I'm gonna get a filter adjustment thingy and then put ND filters and then start maybe playing around with the video aspects. But to answer the questions, I will not be addressing any video stuff in the next coming events.
Jeff, we're giving him homework. I'm gonna lock him out of the YouTube until he shoots video with it. Nah.
Fair enough.
No, I'm messing with you. But look, we always love a little challenge, right? I mean, that's something
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
it's no different than transitioning from an SLR setup or DSLR setup or mirrorless camera setup going down to paring down to a point and shoot. You're taking a step, right? And
Yeah.
jumping from video, we stick to what we know. We stick to what's comfortable. Video super easy on the phone. I
Oh, yeah.
find myself, it's like I take a lot more video on my phone than I do stills because
Yeah,
stills, I'm like, well, no, I have a little, point in
yeah.
my point and shoot does video too, but there's something that's just easy to get really good quality and it's quick and the phone's
I
made it so easy.
Yeah, and I think it kind of defeats the purpose a little bit for me personally of like why I love this camera. It's the simplicity aspect of it. And if I do video, then I know I'm gonna want to shoot S-Log 2, and then I know I'm gonna want to take it into DaVinci and color grade it and then edit it, and then I'm like and it has to go into like a thing. But it does sound fun, the idea of doing a project or small film purely on this camera. And again, we love the challenge, we love restrictions, so yeah, that might happen. We'll see.
Jeff, we're giving him homework. It's it. Done. Decided. Miriam, thank you for joining. Miriam says, thank you for this workshop. Very informative. Peter bought an RX100 and Mark III several years ago when he had a camera emergency. We love getting forced into gear purchases. It's become his favorite travel camera when he can't or doesn't want to bring large cameras. Your images are convincing. Also, having the flip out screen is advantageous over a smartphone.
Oh yeah.
I
And
think
the little
that's the
viewfinder too.
yeah, that's with the point and shoots, we're constantly comparing them, and even just a market comparison to smartphones has always
Hmm.
been, with the invention and the popularity of smartphone
Oh yeah.
cameras, it's kind of wiped out point and shoots. But there is, I for one, I just talked about it. I don't like using my phone to take still images. I
Yeah.
still prefer a point and shoot, and I think there's still that. I don't know. Maybe it's like the people who still like to shoot film. Are we a growing group or are we just
I
a
think it could be
stubborn group?
the same reason. It's the same cause almost. There's a feeling associated with it. And again, like I don't think most people, if I point a phone at them, they'll give me a peace sign. I don't think that I'll probably ever see that. But there's a almost like a complete change of aura and mentality with that camera, with how people receive it. And again, like we're gonna dive more into the little tools and viewfinder and flip out screen accessories, all that in the next one. But yeah, I don't think it's again, they overlap a lot and they could kind of complement each other, but I don't think it does quite yet reach that same level, whether it's technical or like psychological, especially in the editing. I think that part is I think the biggest part for me when it comes to phone photography versus a little point and shoot.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you did bring up a great point, and that kind of runs along the line of the psychological aspect of how it's received by people. It's always funny. It's like years ago, a big camera was intimidating. Then everybody got comfortable with photography and having cameras on every phone. And now it was phones that were uncomfortable because a big camera said, "Oh, this person's legit. They're not a creep. It's
Professional.
not a creep
Yeah.
with a cell phone. Yeah, they're professional."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And now I feel like phones have come back around to not being creepy anymore because now it's not creepy, it's more accepted, but a
Yeah,
phone
yeah.
is connected to the internet. So you have people who are unhinged by,
Yeah, yeah.
okay, a camera is more it's not as alarming because it's not something that it doesn't you don't make the instant connection
Yeah,
like this
yeah.
person is going to upload this image to the internet. Whereas I know when I see, and I'm a photographer, when I see someone with holding a phone up to me, I'm like, oh, great. It's some kid taking a TikTok. Where am
Yeah,
I going to be on the internet? What are they going to
exactly.
capture me
Exactly.
saying that I didn't realize I was being recorded or this or
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
How long before I get
Exactly. There's
canceled?
so many other things that come to mind before that.
Yeah.
And
It's
I
just a psychological timeline of
yeah,
technology.
absolutely. And again, not to be more of a fanboy about this camera, but I think this size camera in general is such a good balance between again getting away from the creepiness of the phone or like all the associations you mentioned, but also kind of getting a little bit of the legitness of an actual camera without the intimidating aspect. So it's a good like the little 80/20 rule. And yeah, I think it's a pretty good balance, I would say.
Awesome. Well, Maher, thanks for bringing this wonderful series to us. Again, we have two
Of
more
course.
parts. Of course, huge thank you to Sony for hosting and for a wonderful camera. I think everybody agrees that this camera has really cemented itself in that spot as just a solid all around point and shoot option for lazy photographers like me, photographers who want to pack light, and even the non-photographers. This is a great everyday camera, and I
Absolutely.
think that's something that we talk about everything from this photographer stamp, but this is something that, I'd give to my son, that, anybody who, even if they're not into photography, so to speak, you just take it around, take pictures every day, document your life, document your world. I think that's a great thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this camera is good for a lot of people. Use discount code. No, I'm kidding.
I know, we're like, use this buy camera now.
Buy it as a gift for anyone. It's good for everybody and can help you reach enlightenment.
You said set it and forget it earlier. You already got us off on this whole. I got Ron Popeil in the back of my head. I'm like, man, is he gonna start selling rotisserie chicken machines? Oh man, I watch too much late night television, as you can see. But again, huge thank you to my hair. Man, I love hearing you say your name.
Me- 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 I think you said it right.
I'm like, man, I'm like, I sound like my wife making fun when I over enunciate stuff, and it's like my head.
Man, see, I struggle with this so much because I used to say it kind of in the way that anyone would say it in America, but like I find that there's so many wrong ways to say it, and I had to pick one. But then I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna say it right. Especially in the beginning of a workshop, it makes me feel a little bit better to just say it properly. And then you also introduced me and said Maher, so people know how to address me, which is great.
I
So I
started
can
this problem.
no, no, this is perfect because now people can address me. Because if I go up to people and say, my name is Meher, people are gonna try to say it and then maybe learn, but eventually they'll refer to me as, hey, man, hey, bro. So yeah, so it's a tool to, for people to get my attention at the end of the day. So I'm
I
glad we
love
can
it.
use it.
Huge thank you to this guy above me in the screen. It's like we're the Brady Bunch. Oh, my head. This was great, man. I want to thank you
Thank you.
again. He threw up the dates for the next two in this series, and then we got another one after that we have
Yeah,
scheduled for him. So check
I'm
out
so
our
excited.
website, B&H Event Space. You can find his events. You can find all of our other events. Again, if you're watching this on YouTube, you already found the place to be. Huge thank you to Sony, Maher, and the rest of the B&H Event Space team. I'm going to work on the name for next time.
No, you're doing
That
great.
is
I promise.
that is
I didn't
all
even
we have
notice.
for today. Another edition of the B&H Event Space now in the books. I'm going to give two salutes here. Catch y'all next time.